Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. The battle between the Trump administration and California escalating again over the heated subject of immigration. Now the state is suing the administration over its controversial decision to add a question about citizenship to the 2020 census. California's Attorney General fired up earlier.
Given the way that this administration has attacked immigrants, you can understand why immigrant families would be afraid to fill out the census questionnaire. This latest move by the Trump administration to threaten California is not just a bad idea, it's against the law.
Population counts from the census affect everything from federal funding to how many House seats are allocated to each state. Critics fear the change would result in a substantial undercount. Here was the White House on the move today.
This is a question that's been included in every census since 1965, with the exception of 2010 when it was removed. We've contained this question that's provided data that's necessary for the Department of Justice to protect voters and specifically to help us better comply with the Voting Rights Act, which is something that is important and a part of this process. And again, this is something that has been part of the census for decades and something that the Department of Commerce felt strongly needed to be included again.
Michelle Malkin had a great line about this, Kimberly. She said, only in America can you get sued for asking who's in America.
Well, this is the problem. I used to get in trouble in court, and I thought it was the most unbelievable thing. It was, you almost had to ask for an apology to the court, to the judge, just to ask someone's true name, identity, because they said, no, we don't want to give it. But what do you mean? We're trying to be here in court. We're trying to identify who you are, if you have a record, exactly what we're dealing with, if you have any priors, et cetera, if you're a threat to public safety, and whether or not we can appropriately determine what your bail status should be in the schedule. Nope. And then you would have 16 different names. No one knows who anybody is. And then, God forbid, if you ask to fingerprint someone and run them through the system. This is similar. Like, why would you not? This is a legal right that you're trying to get in terms of whether your citizenship status is valid or not. What is are you a green card? Are you someone who is here as a legal resident? Are you here illegally in the country? Because certain benefits inure to you depending on that status. And there are rules and laws in place for people to be able to attain citizenship. So why not? So is it fair to those people, everybody who's come here and followed the rules, to then have those that don't? And now you have to do an apology if you ask for it.
So, Juan, to Kimberly's point, are they just doing this because they want to protect the redistricting and also the federal funding that they get from the federal government?
No, I think they do want to do those things, but it's not the reason.
What's the real reason?
Well, I think the real reason comes down to you want people to participate. The reason that we have a census, the reason the Federalist Papers, James Madison, established a census was that it was important to have an accurate count of the entire American population in order then to make sure that we were properly represented in the House, and also that we had statistics about where there was a need for federal funding projects and the like, that it was properly distributed. So who wanted to avoid there being a revolution of people who felt that they weren't being represented by the federal government. But I'll say this, let me just quickly add, this is about a situation where you had, I think here it says on my notes, you had about 63% participation in the census in 2010. In the 1970s, 75% of the people in the country participated. Right now, the estimate is that it's going to go down to around 55% of the American population will participate. But the objectionable part, Jesse, just to pick up on the point, is that the Trump re-election campaign has sent out a notice to its fundraisers saying, hey, let's get behind this. We want this. We want this. And you got to stop and think then, well, so this is about politics. This is not about getting an accurate count.
Okay. I'll ask this to Greg then. Greg, if there were a bunch of Russians, hiding out in California and don't you think the Democrats would want to know if there was some illegal alien Russians,
The Democrats only favor one kind of election interference. But they're picking a fight because it's part of a larger agenda to undermine kind of the Trump law and order ideology that actually worked. And so this is just another way of doing it. How dare the Census Bureau actually take a census. I mean, God forbid. The other questions they ask, but by the way, the other thing that really bugs me, this is an example again of California spending taxpayer money to assist non-citizens rather than the citizens themselves. And they wonder why people are leaving. It's because they're not getting the services. And this is, I mean, they ask about your date of birth, which is ageist. How dare they do that? Ethnic origin, racist. Occupation, that's workist.
Gender?
And of course, gender is so offensive, I won't even go there.
How many boxes do we have for
And what
that
about marital history? I mean, that's singlist. And so it's like,
Take it easy.
It's not a census, it's non-census is what I do. But you need this data so that you can help people.
Right.
And the problem is, if you undermine the system because of some kind of symbolic ideology, you're going to end up with economic chaos because you need to know what people are there and what they need.
If you were an illegal immigrant and you were taking the census, Dana, would you be scared to check the box, I am here illegally?
Right, because you're scared of like mass deportation.
Yeah, he's going to check the thing and roll it against the ICE
Well, in the
spreadsheet.
1950s, there was a mass deportation in the Eisenhower administration, which is, I think, probably why this question was taken off later on in the years. But I'm not against this question being asked. I mean, the census is to allocate seats in Congress, and the resources from the federal government then are divvied up. If you are not here legally, you do not have representation in Congress. But I think one of the things that the states have a problem with is that imagine you're California and you know that you have a high illegal immigrant problem in your state, or maybe you don't think it's a problem. But there is an undercount. Okay, so now you are without not just congressional seats, but resources.
The money.
So that becomes a problem. And then it gets back to what Greg was saying, that then you are basically using federal taxpayer dollars to try to pay for people who are here illegally. And that is the rub. I do think that they probably could have held off on the political notification because I think they're on solid ground legally and on the policy point, and they're saying we want to be able to enforce the Voting Rights Act appropriately. Fine, leave it at that. You can do the fundraising later. You didn't have to do it on the same day.
And this does dovetail with the sanctuary push that we're seeing out there in California, Kimberly. Now, I think a bunch of little cities in Orange County are saying enough is enough. And we had the mayor of Los Alamitos, I believe, who came out and is suing the state or trying to sue the state to make sure he doesn't have to go along with their sanctuary status. There seems to be a growing movement, especially in Orange County, to fight the California's sanctuary status.
Right, because they say you do not represent the rest of our citizens here. So you have like different counties and municipalities standing up to assert their rights, which they should. I love this part of government where you then have people saying, listen to me, you're not representing my interests. And in fact, you're doing us a disservice, both financially and politically and ideologically. This is not where we stand. We actually want to abide by the rules and the laws on the books. We would like to continue to have federal government support and not act in disregard, blatant disregard of the laws on the book. 100%. And you saw this kind of evolving over time. It was percolating in California. It's going to be very interesting how this plays out in the election coming up as well, because there are certain disparate parts that really have no bid for the rest of California in the way that they're behaving. It's like a very vocal minority speaking out up and against people who in fact want to go, okay, but let's slow our roll and make sure that we are going to get all of our benefits and not going to get tossed out aside and cast out California, secede from the union, the whole deal.
And the sheriff in Orange County said that, I think from the beginning of this year to March 19th, they released 172 criminal illegal aliens out onto the streets of their county. Some were convicted of domestic violence, theft, DUI, and other threats. And they're saying enough. Like, why aren't we protecting the people that are in our county? My job as the sheriff, I have to protect these people. They were forced to release these criminals out into the streets.
I don't think they were forced.
They had to comply with California's sanctuary city policy.
No, because if the federal government had a detainer or a warrant,
they're not allowed to communicate.
Oh yes, no.
They cannot cooperate.
The federal government, there's no communication necessary. The federal government will issue a warrant. We want this person.
They will issue the warrant when they know who's in the system.
No,
if they don't know who's in the system, how are they going to issue a detainer?
That's the problem.
If they know and they issue a detainer or a warrant, then
they don't know
what?
because they're not getting the information because there's no cooperation.
My point would be that, Kimberly, to continue that conversation, I think people have a right And the sheriffs and the folks in Orange County have a right to say, we disagree with the state. I'm all for it. But I don't agree.
I could tell you liked that.
What?
I could tell you liked it.
I did. But I also think that it's the case, just as we were talking about the census a minute ago, when you have Republican and Democrats who were former directors of the U.S. Census say to Wilbur Ross, the current head of Commerce and therefore Census, don't do it. We don't know. This is going to undermine the quality of our census. 6 former directors, Republican, Democrat. I think it's a worthy point.
Greg, what do you think about that and the sanctuary chaos?
We are a nation of laws. We are not a nation of sanctuaries. And it's the laws that actually create real sanctuary, not symbolic sanctuaries. This metaphor explains everything.
Great point.
Sanctuaries exist on the backs of others who do the right thing. It's like when somebody steals your Wi-Fi, right? Somebody can only steal your Wi-Fi if you actually are paying for the Wi-Fi, and the theft actually hurts your service. So sanctuary cities, which take in illegals, actually hurt the cities themselves because they are using more government assistance, more services, and more benefits.
Yeah.
So basically what sanctuary cities are people that are ripping you off of your Wi-Fi. And the problem with liberals is they can't see the logic. Let's just bring everybody in. Let everybody use your Wi-Fi because somebody else is paying for it.
Yeah.
But over time, your Wi-Fi can't handle it. And it drives me nuts that we allow leftists to be immune to their lawlessness.
Well, I got to say, Greg, I am going to tell my children what you said tonight because, you know, they'll use my passcodes for various things, you know, HBO and the
I have
like,
a feeling someone's ripping off Greg's Wi-Fi.
I tell you, these
I see them all the time.
All right.
You can always tell when your Wi-Fi's
That's why
slow.
you need to name your Wi-Fi something like CIA surveillance.
Yes.
Any last word?
Well, I would say that the Attorney General of California is putting a lot of resources behind suing the Trump administration for lots of different things, just like the Texas Attorney General did the same thing during the Obama administration. But because they've passed this law in California in regards to the state and the sanctuary state issue, then I think that it would be good if the taxpayers of California could ask the Attorney General for legal advice. So which laws should I obey? If the federal government calls me and they want to know something about something that's happening in my business, should I respond to them or should I call you? Like, who's going to protect me and which law should I obey? I mean, that is a problem. I'm a little disappointed that the Supreme Court has decided not to expedite review of this and let the court system play out because I feel like the country really does need some clarity, legal clarity, and we're not going to get it for a while.
I know we aren't going to find out who's stealing Greg's Wi-Fi, but there's a lot of suspicious people. Ahead, the Stormy Side Show over at another cable news network.
Your friend is a thug.
Well, thank you.
Is a thug.
That's $1 million.
No, that's
$1 million.
Thug.
$1 million.
Thug.
You know what?
Thug.
You're a thug.
Thug.
My buddy.
Don't miss Greg's monologue and our analysis after that.